If you've spent any time looking at real estate listings lately, you've probably seen terms like LEED certified, Energy Star, Net Zero, HERS score, and if you're like most buyers, you're nodding along and had absolutely no idea what any of that actually means. And if you're a seller, you might be sitting on a home with all these features and not know how to talk about them or what they're actually worth. So today we're going to fix that. I'm a geologist and I'm a real estate agent, and I care a lot about what actually is under your home and around it, not just what the marketing says. So we're going to go through all the major green certifications, what they actually mean, where they fall short, and what you should actually care about as a buyer or seller. Okay, first things first. Can any home just call itself green? The short answer is no, or at least it shouldn't be able to. The word green gets thrown around constantly in real estate marketing as well as real life. And a lot of it is what the industry calls greenwashing, which I'm sure you've heard of that before. It's just a fancy word for exaggerating or misinterpreting how energy efficient or environmentally friendly a home actually is, or anything else. As someone with a science background, this drives me absolutely crazy because buyers are making 6- and 7-figure decisions based on language that has no legal definition. So let's talk about the certifications that actually mean something. A genuinely green home uses less energy, less water, fewer natural resources compared to a typical home, and it produces less waste and generally healthier for the people that live in it. That's the baseline. Everything else is a measurement system for how well a home can hit those targets. I think the one that most people have heard of the most is Energy Star, and this is a US government program that started in like 1992, and originally it was just for appliances and electronics, but it actually expanded to cover entire homes now. You've seen the label on refrigerators and washing machines like probably your whole life, but for a whole home to have Energy Star certification, it has to be at least 10% more energy efficient than a home built to code, with an average improvement closer to 20%. And that means proper insulation, high performance windows, tight construction, efficient HVAC, and Energy Star appliances, of course. And for buyers, an Energy Star certified home is a pretty meaningful baseline. It's not the gold standard, but it is a verified floor. It tells you the home was built or retrofitted to a documented standard, not just like a marketing thing. And for sellers, if your home has Energy Star appliances, but not a whole home certification, those are still worth calling out in your listing. Okay, you should make sure your agent knows that. Studies show that buyers are actively looking for this. 81% of buyers in a recent survey said Energy Star appliances were more important to them, and 83% wanted Energy Star rated windows. So these aren't really niche preferences anymore. They're kind of like a majority expectation, especially among buyers who are looking for that kind of thing. While we're on the subject of things that show up in listings without explanation, SEER ratings. SEER stands for Seasonal Energy Efficient Rating, and it measures how efficiently your air conditioning or heat pump cools your home. So the Department of Energy sets the minimum standards, and those minimums have been climbing. They've been getting higher. And the higher the SEER number, the more efficient the system and the lower your cooling costs. For example, if you're buying a home in a hot climate and the listing mentions the SEER rating of the HVAC system, pay attention to that number. A high SEER system in a hot climate is an actually meaningful cost savings measure, especially over time. And here's where I'm going to put my geology hat on for a second. SEER ratings matter more in some places than others. And it's not just about climate either. So soil type, topography, and even the geology under a home affects how it retains and loses heat. A home built on like dense clay holds heat differently than one that's on sand or rocky substrate. And that does not get discussed in green home conversations very often, but it is an actual variable in energy performance. And the next one we have is LEED, L-E-E-D, and that stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and it's awarded by the US Green Building Council. And this certification has the most rigorous point system. A home earns a point for green features and loses points for things that work against environmental performance, and so the more points, the higher the certification level. And LEED certified homes are documented to use 20 to 30% less energy and water than standard homes, with some reporting up to 60% in savings. They're also built with materials that minimize exposure to airborne toxins. So like better indoor air quality, better ventilation, healthy living environment overall. And for buyers, a LEED certified home is about as verified as it gets when you're someone who's looking for like a green home. These homes also qualify for tax rebates, zoning allowances, and there's other incentives in like hundreds of cities, and they do command a premium on resale. So keep that in mind. For sellers, of course, if your home is LEED certified, you should lead with that, especially since it's a credential, it's not just a feature. So make sure your agent knows how to market it, because frankly, many just don't. And one thing I want to call out here though is that LEED measures the energy a home uses while you live in it. It does not measure the carbon that was emitted to build the thing. So the manufacturing of solar panels, insulation, steel framing, triple pane windows, all of that has a carbon cost, and the LEED does not capture that. So that's something that we call embodied carbon, and it's a bit of an inconvenient truth that a lot of green buildings claim. I did a whole short on this recently, actually, if you want to look into it. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the HERS and the HES. So first, the HERS index, Home Energy Rating System. It's probably the most useful number for buyers of new construction. It's developed by the Residential Energy Services Network, and it kind of works like a golf score where lower is better. A HERS score of 0 means the home produces as much energy as it uses. So like a straight wash, your net zero home. That if you go back and look at my shorts, you'll find out is next to impossible. But the scale goes clear up to 150, and the average new home in 2020 scored a 58, which sounds decent until you realize a standard home built to code scores around 100. So the average new build is already significantly better than code minimum. The rating involves actual on-site inspection, so a blower door test to measure how leaky the building envelope is, duct test to check for leaky ductwork, and an energy modeling analysis. So this isn't someone just checking a box, it is like an actual physically measured number. So states with the most HERS rated homes include Texas, Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, Colorado, and South Carolina. And if you're buying a new construction in any of those states, ask for the HERS score, please and thank you. And if the builder can't produce one or doesn't know what you're talking about, that might tell you something, you know? Okay, we talked about HERS and now HES. Funny names. The Home Energy Score, or HES, I don't know, maybe some people just call it HES. I'm calling it HES because HERS. And it's the Department of Energy's equivalent tool for existing homes rather than new builds. So HERS is for new builds, HES is for existing builds, and it runs on a 1 to 10 scale. So 1 means it uses a lot of energy, and 10 means it's very efficient, and the national average sits around 5. So what makes the HES useful for buyers is that it doesn't just give you a score. It gives you a breakdown of where your home is losing energy, what improvements would help the most, and what those improvements would save you annually. So pretty good thing. It's basically a roadmap for making a less efficient home better. If you're buying an older home and want to understand its actual energy performance before you close, a home energy score assessment is one of the most practical things that you can do. It doesn't cost very much and gives you real data that you can use to negotiate and plan around. Next is the National Green Building Standard, or NGBS. It's approved by the American National Standards Institute and covers 6 categories: energy efficiency, water efficiency, resource efficiency, lot development, operation and maintenance, and indoor air quality. Homes earn a bronze, silver, gold, or emerald rating in each category. But what I like about the NGBS compared to some other certifications is the indoor air quality category. As a geologist, I'm thinking about what's in the ground under the home and how that interacts with what's inside of it. Especially living in Colorado, radon is a huge problem, and there's volatile organic compounds from certain soil types, moisture migration through the foundation, and these are all real indoor air quality issues that a lot of green certifications completely ignore. But the NGBS at least acknowledges that indoor air quality is a category worth evaluating. So that's something. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here because I just mentioned the volatile organic compounds, or you may know them better as VOCs. And I think most people have heard of VOCs in the context of like fresh paint or new carpet off-gassing inside of a home. But there's a whole category of volatile organic compounds that come from the ground itself. And like nobody talks about it in real estate, mostly because they don't know. Certain soil and rock types naturally contain organic compounds that volatilize, meaning they turn into gas and migrate upwards through the soil pores and foundation cracks into living spaces, just like radon. Petroleum-bearing sediment formations naturally occur in coal seams, and there's even decomposing organic-rich soils that can off-gas things like benzene. And they're not just like unpleasant smells. We know that benzene is a carcinogen, and we know that long-term exposure, even at low concentrations, can carry serious health risks. So this gets more complicated in areas that have like known industrial history. And if a home sits near land that was previously used for dry cleaning, auto repair, fuel storage, or manufacturing even decades ago, residual chlorinated solvents and petroleum compounds can persist in the soil and continue to migrate into the homes that were built on top of them even long after the source is gone. And this is called vapor intrusion, and it's a recognized environmental hazard that has its own EPA guidance document. And it doesn't show up in standard home inspections because I've talked about this before. Home inspectors are just so basic, and it doesn't show up in any green certifications either. So, and it's almost never disclosed unless a formal phase 1 or phase 2 environmental site assessment has been done on the property, and like who's going to order that? And of course, the geology matters here too. Sandy soils and fractured rocks really allow for vapors to come through. They migrate more freely through those than they do the like clay soil, and that can actually act as a partial barrier at least. So 2 homes a quarter mile apart can have very different vapor intrusion risk profiles based purely on what's underneath them. What should buyers do, especially if they're looking to buy in an industrial or in an area that has an industrial history or like near a former gas station? I've seen those for sale before. Dry cleaners, or maybe they live in a region with like naturally petroleum bearing geology. You just have to ask questions. A radon test is not going to catch these things. There are specific VOC air quality tests available, and in some cases an environmental screen of the property history is worth the cost before you close. And I have heard of insurance companies requiring them, especially if there's like a old gas station involved. That's why you see a lot of rural properties that like maybe used to have gas stations out there, and then they just raised it and then sold it as a lot. And then they're just like, oh yeah, it used to be a gas station. And you go to buy it and the insurance is like, yeah, no, we need to make sure this is not leaking underground and causing all this environmental damage that isn't going to show up for a few years, and then you're going to be like stuck with it, or they may not cover it altogether. It's a whole thing. Tangent over. So if you are buying and the listing mentions any of those certifications or green features that I mentioned previously, here is what you should actually ask. Can you provide the certification documentation? Not just a claim in the listing, the actual certificate. What's the HERS score or the home energy score? If it's a new build, this should exist. If it's an existing home, the HES assessment can be done before you close, and which I highly recommend you do. What are the actual utility bills? This is a real number. Ask for 12 months of bills. A certified home that runs hot appliances and leaves lights on everywhere still has high bills. This was a thing that we considered when we bought my last home. It had huge solar panels, and of course the seller was smart to leave his bills out on the table for all of the potential buyers to see that he was getting like $100 back every month. $100 to $200 back in cash just for having a lot of solar panels. So we enjoyed that little feature. Next thing to ask is, has a home energy audit ever been done? If yes, ask for the report. If no, consider getting one before you close, especially on an older home. And finally ask, what is under the home? I know it sounds like an odd question, but soil type, geology, and actual site conditions will affect moisture, radon, thermal performance, and the long-term structural stability. And these are things that most buyers don't really think to ask, and most agents definitely don't think to ask. But that's kind of my whole thing, right? Okay, so there it is. That's every major green certification explained. What they mean for buyers, what they mean for sellers, and where the gaps are that nobody really talks about. So the honest takeaway that you should get from this is that green certifications are useful tools, but they measure what they measure, and that's it. A lead score doesn't tell you about the radon coming through the foundation. A HERS index doesn't tell you about the expansive clay soil that's going to heave your slab in 15 years. And energy efficiency is one layer of a home's performance story, and it's an important one, but it's not the whole story. And that's what this channel is for. I want to give you honest, science-backed takes on what's actually going on with a home and the ground that it lives on and what you will be living on. So subscribe to me, Basalty. And if you're actively buying somewhere and want a referral to an agent who actually knows this kind of thing, or maybe they don't, I can coach them. The link is in my bio. And don't forget to like and subscribe and, all that. Remember to stay informed and stay grounded. See you in the next one.